Welcome to this episode of the NLN podcast, Nursing Edge Unscripted. I am the host of today's episode, Raquel Bertiz from the National League for Nursing. In this episode, we will shine a spotlight on what's one of the most transformative professional development opportunities for nurse educators, the National League for Nursing's Faculty Intensive course. Today, we're joined by course faculty themselves, who will share the vision behind the program, the impact it had on educators and institutions, and why so many participants say, I wish I had this course sooner. Whether you're a nurse educator, a dean or director, advocating for your faculty, or simply passionate about the future of nursing education, this conversation will give you insight into how investing in faculty development can transform not just individual careers, but entire nursing programs. Our guests today are Dr. Rachel Onello, who is a nursing education consultant, and Dr. Nicole Smith, a co-program director of the University of Maryland School of Nursing. And both of our guests bring very extensive experiences as nurse educators and as leaders of nursing programs. And they offer unique perspectives on how faculty development can shape not only individual careers, but the future of nursing education. Welcome, Dr. Onello and Dr. Smith. Thank you for joining me today. All right. So, can you describe what the NLN Faculty Intensive course is and who is it designed for? And also kind of like what drew you to become faculty of this course and its personal meaning to you?
Nicole, do you want to start?
Sure. The emphasis for this course is built around instructional design, curricular mapping, and the science of teaching and learning. And one thing that really drew me to the course was I've always believed that developing nurses takes far more than clinical expertise. And so just helping my colleagues to move beyond just teaching content toward really intentionally designing meaning for those learning experiences for our students. You know, we only get one day, sometimes a couple of hours with our learners a week. So we really have to make every second count. And this course moves learners through all those pieces so they can build the confidence to teach across learning environments. That's what drew me to this course.
I would agree with Nicole. You know, something that hit me very hard early on was recognizing the transition, the very, very real transition from expert clinician to novice educator. And a lot of us go through that transition when we enter academia. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of time or resources or access even from our mentors or our colleagues or from our administration when we enter academia to really build the unique skill set that's grounded in the art and science of education. And so what really drew me to be involved with faculty intensives is that a huge passion of mine is really focusing on this paradigm shift from nurses who teach to educators who teach nursing. And that is two very different things. And so I am very passionate about helping other faculty develop the skills and really hone their art and their practice of teaching that's aligned with best practices across multiple disciplines. So really in the cognitive science of learning and classical education, how do we help our learners learn how to learn? And how can we become learning mentors for our students? Because a lot of times the way that they think that they should be learning is not the way that science really tells us our brain is wired to do it. And similarly, we as educators aren't always equipped to help mentor them in that way to learn that. So that's what really drew me to this course, because it's very much grounded in the best practice of assessment and evaluation, curriculum mapping, lesson planning. How do you even then take that and bring it into the classroom? And when I say classroom, online, hybrid, clinical simulation, face-to-face, in a way that is immersive, interactive, and really builds the skills around clinical judgment.
Yeah, so you both said so many significant statements about what's currently happening in nursing education around nurse education preparation, the nurse educator, I should say. How are nurses who are going to educate prepared? And right now, our educators would enter academia with varying preparation, right? So, in your experience, so what are some of the most common challenges that the nurse educators who registered in previous faculty intensive courses bring into the course, or even just your regular observations in your capacity as leaders of nursing programs? What are the challenges that new nurse educators present related to their academic preparation or perhaps their preparation prior to the academic world?
One thing I love about this course is that it's not just for the new educator, right? It can also be for the experienced educator, because if you look at many of the applications and job postings around the country, many times there's no requirement for formal training and teaching and learning, right? So this course can be that. And again, faculty come to academia with lots of experience and they're expert clinicians, but going into a classroom or a lab setting or a clinical environment for the first time with no formal training can be absolutely overwhelming. And so this course really walks faculty through that curriculum structure, demystifying all the pieces, assessment, and it allows time for them to have some small wins and small gains and add more to their toolbox to be successful. So they oftentimes come to the course and say, I'm overwhelmed. Learners aren't engaged. I don't know how to do this. I don't know where my curriculum map is. I don't understand how to write an objective or how to look at a test. And we walk them through those pieces and really give them time to apply the concepts and have dialogue about the concepts to help them add more tools to their toolbox.
Yep,
Yes.
yep, having that toolbox, right?
Mhm.
Because and therefore related to the challenges that they don't have the tools
Yeah.
right away, and presenting them with a toolbox is really a great thing.
And talking about the toolbox, we have been really privileged and honored to have educators join us in these faculty development sessions and the cohorts that have been teaching for many years. So just like Nicole said, it's not for the novice, just for the novice educator. We've also had educators join us who have been teaching 10, 20, upwards of 30 years. And it's so interesting because more often than not, they'll say, oh, well, I've learned new things. I've learned some new tools to put in my toolbox, or now I understand why I've been doing the things that I've been doing, which now allows them to communicate that to their learners and explain why, which then translates to buy-in and less pushback. And there's also things too that even if you've been an educator for a while, we also dive into this changing landscape of academia. We all know that it's constantly changing. And so as the course has evolved over the years, it also has been really trying to stay ahead of some of the changes in academia. So we talk about competency-based education, we talk about AI, we talk about some of the nuanced legal and academic challenges that we will face as educators, socializing into the role. How do we lead from where we are? Because many of us may not even step into administrative roles or formal leadership roles, but we can lead from where we are and we can affect change in our institutions from the roles that we hold. And so we even talk about that as well. And so it's really nice because we often see a spectrum of educators join us from the very new, like Nicole talked about, they're trying to figure out how to write an objective and, develop a lesson, to the folks who have been teaching a while and are now navigating new challenges in academia and looking to, one, find some validation and a community of practice, as well as new ideas and new tools.
Yeah, and that brings to the attention of everyone, all of us as educators, the fact that we might be able to master some of the things that educators would do, write exams, teach in the classroom, facilitate learning experiences. But more often than not, do we know the pedagogies around those things or evidence or theoretical explanations of the things we do? And I think the buy-in is very important. Like, why are we doing this? Knowing that is really kind of important. And I am certain this course really hones that in during the 12 weeks of interactions, as asynchronous and then synchronous sessions that you all have. So in your years of facilitating this course, can you share stories or examples of what participants say or shared with you with how they have grown or transformed because of the course?
You know, one of my favorite aspects of this course is the community of practice that's built, and it endures long beyond the time that we all are together. And so we've heard that some cohorts stay in touch, and many of our colleagues that are in the courses will continue to stay in touch with us long after the courses end. And so some of the things that we've heard that have just been really inspiring and encouraging are folks that will email us back and share with us some of these new teaching techniques or approaches that they're trying out in their academic practice. You know, most recently we had one of our cohort participants say, you know, she was relatively newer. She'd been teaching for several years, but had gained some new tools and shifted her paradigm a bit on her approach to teaching. And she had been awarded 2 teaching awards, one from her colleagues and the other from the students. And, you know, it's great to always be recognized by your colleagues, but man, does it mean something when the students recognize you as adding value to their learning experience? And so that was really special to hear. There's folks that will come back and say, you know, they use this as a building block in their trajectory towards certification. And just as a disclaimer, this course is not meant to be a certification prep course. However, it is very much rooted and aligned with an NLN core competencies, educator core competencies. And so it becomes a resource for folks who are trying to elevate their practice as an educator, and it helps with that path. I think finally, you know, one of the most heartwarming ones that we had, and Nicole, this may stand out to you as well. It was in our last cohort of an educator who is very seasoned, a wonderful educator, clearly had touched a lot of lives over the years, and was at a moment in her career where she was really questioning whether she wanted to stay in academia. And she, you know, joined this course, and through the support of her colleagues that were in her cohort and the conversations and the dialogue, she really started reevaluating whether she was leaving academia. And that was so touching to me because we almost lost a really good educator that hopefully maybe, you know, I think a lot of us sometimes feel on an island, or sometimes, you know, we may as an educator really need the value of someone's outside perspective to help us. And I think this course offers that too, as a form of validation and new perspectives from others. And so she really wanted to reevaluate, and she's staying in education for now. And so that was really heartwarming.
Those stories for me as well, Rachel. And I think the beauty of us spending the months together with this course in the asynchronous format and then coming together in a synchronous fashion is we begin to see those shifts in our colleagues, right? As we begin to, they learn new things and trial new tools, and they begin to really transform their teaching philosophy, no matter how long they've been teaching. And so that's beautiful to see how far they've come from where they start out when they join with us to the very end of our time together. So.
Yeah, and I think those stories are very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, we always have this vision of transforming nursing education. But I also believe that this transformation would have to start from faculty members, from the educators themselves. So therefore, seeing this transformation among individual participants, do we see any potential impact to transform not just individual faculty members, but institutions as well?
Absolutely. We get most of our participants from word of mouth and the advertisements, of course, that NLN does, but there's a real ripple effect. So we have had some sessions where there's colleagues from several institutions. And again, faculty leave us some tools they can really use immediately, right? Which is going to improve the student learning experience. We've seen it build capacity for retention. And if we can help educators feel more confident and supported and connected, right, it's going to improve student experiences. It's going to improve program outcomes. I think if we were to track this from a resource standpoint, we could see it improve some of the licensure and student satisfaction and graduation rates and practice ready. So absolutely, I think it has the ability to transform organizations for consistency and just elevating teaching practice and teaching excellence.
One of my favorite stories about how one educator at one institution can make transformative change was when the educator started trying out low-hanging fruit, just some small wins in their classroom that were based on the science of best practice of teaching. And they had small wins and gains that positively impacted the learners. And it was the learners who drove the change, right? Because, and it may not be right, the day you plant, and we talk about this in the course, the day you plant the seed is not the day you pick the fruit. And so they're going to be in that class. Those educators are going to be just trying it out, going through the grind, and they may not see that payoff right away. But where we do, and in the story that I'm sharing, it paid off was then the learners who were positively impacted by that and thought, and experienced, oh, wow, this really is helping me make connections in the classroom. Oh, I am actually, or connections in the clinical too. I am really seeing a difference on my scores and understanding on my tests and in my patient practice. That shows up then on an evaluation. And so this educator who's trying these things out, not always, seeing the immediate reward, had an educator come to them and say, I got this strange comment on my eval from last semester that said, I really wish that so-and-so would start doing these activities that Dr. So-and-so did in her class. Can you tell me about that? And that educator said, sure, how about you come to my class and watch? And that's how it started to spread, by the students really sharing their voices. And we know in academia, it's really the student voices that can affect most change. And so, being consistent, picking the low-hanging fruit, showing up, really leaning into your teaching philosophy and living that out will reap the fruit with the learners, who then spread that through, talk, and they talk through their evals, and that then will really put a ball in motion for others to say, try and get on board with that train. What is it that you're doing in your class that students love this class? They love how this is taught, and you get buy-in that way, and it happens.
Right, and that shows the power of students in driving change, and we've seen that so many times. We satisfy students, well, that's basic, but then in the long run, if we can see how they're driving learning outcomes, then that's a very powerful driver of change in institutions as well. And you're both leaders in your various organizations. How can our leaders in various programs use this course, for example, as part of a broader strategy to strengthen their nursing programs, teaching excellence, and even faculty retention?
I think this course could be used for onboarding of new faculty, ongoing faculty development. I think if leaders take a stance and say, support their faculty to engage in this course, they're making a statement that good teaching matters, right? In addition to service and scholarship, but that if we build on teaching excellence, we are supporting our students, we're supporting ourselves, especially since this course is built through those NLN educator competencies.
And that drives home the point of good teaching does not just happen. We need preparation. And unfortunately, because we don't have a consistent pre-academic world preparation, some do, of course, right? But many don't. And therefore, what do we do when we have our educators here and now, and they need to be supported to be real excellent educators? We need to do something. Right. And now, what advice would you give our nurse educators who are hesitant about taking the faculty intensive course? Oh, it's too long, or I don't have the time, and so many other challenges that we have to further our skills or our competencies as nurse educators.
Well, I think I would really highlight, I think a beauty and a strength of this course is the hybrid nature of it, right? So we've designed it in a way that part of it, the asynchronous modules are very self-paced. And so although we have, the 3 modules that are asynchronous followed by a synchronous module, it allows some of that flexibility and wiggle room because we recognize educators, as Nicole likes to say, I'm going to quote her, are time poor, right? We've got a lot going on, a lot of competing priorities. And sometimes, unfortunately, investment in ourselves and our practice takes the back seat to what feels like more urgent, pressing matters. And so there's flexibility in the time commitment of being able to self-pace through these asynchronous modules and then have that protected time where we come together for that synchronous module that is not a rehash of what you did on your own. It's really this immersive, active learning, flexing those teaching muscles, getting feedback from colleagues and peers and experts in building these skills and building this community of practice, using each other as a sounding board. And then moving back into the asynchronous modules again, where there's more flexibility in time. And so there is more breathing room, more wiggle room that allows the participants to still be able to invest in themselves and in their practice without feeling like they've got this other commitment that they've got to be present for every single week at this standing time.
I'll just add that one thing that we often hear participants say is, I wish I had this course sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they are brand new, starting and been there a month, or they have been there for years. So my advice would be, don't wait. Even if you feel stretched or short on time, that we all are, this course really meets participants where they are. And we have strategies, small strategies that you can apply when you're ready. But the community that we build and the resources that are shared are invaluable to teaching practice and really creates a roadmap for success in the faculty role.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and I'm thinking and reflecting on that comment, Nicole, that we do hear a lot, which is, I wish I had this course sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And if I think about that in my own practice, had I had a course like this, I would have saved myself a lot of time trying to undo the things that I probably shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
And learning from mistakes and learning from, doing it probably in an inefficient way that then I had to, backtrack on. So, an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. So I think in a way, equipping ourselves with these skills, equipping ourselves with the knowledge and understanding of how do you tightly align, closely align outcomes that are deriving teaching strategies that are tied to evaluation methods that make sense and lead to durable learning and building of clinical judgment. All of those things actually makes you more efficient as an educator, I think. And I think that ties back to your question, Raquel, if we go back to as administrators, what would you tell administrators? And some of these things that are built into this course around curriculum mapping and understanding verticality and horizontal alignment and building, tight lessons that have outcomes that drive evaluation, that pays off tenfold when it comes to time for accreditation and self-study and having a workforce of educators that really can speak to the pedagogy of what's going on at your institution. That makes a really robust and very successful faculty.
I know. Yes, I totally agree with the two of you, especially with just that quote about, I wish I had this course sooner. It resonates with me so much also. And the one thing that I always reflect on are, I would say, things that I should not have done, but I did not know that before, and how I would probably have harmed individuals. I'm hoping not. But there is a huge possibility of harming learners as well, because we are not doing evidence-based teaching or the practice of education that is harmful because it's not safe. So yeah, these are things that are really going to impact our careers, our practice as educators, and then we have resources like this course that we can have moving forward. So
yeah, I think, and something that we may not have already talked about, but would be worth noting about the course is our focus on how do we teach in a way that builds clinical judgment by focusing on making thinking visible? So really, what are the strategies as educators that we can use? And we build on that foundation, the basics we have to have about outcomes and evaluation strategies and course mapping and all that, curriculum mapping. But when the rubber meets the road, when we are in our learning spaces with our learners, whether that's classroom, clinical, online, simulation, how do we teach in a way that makes thinking visible, that helps make sure that our learners are getting to the right answers for the right reasons, not getting lucky, and getting to the right answers for the wrong reasons that will lead them into trouble in other situations, and how that thinking can transfer to other contexts and other environments. And the ability to make thinking visible and to focus on the cognitive functions that build into clinical judgment is an art and a skill. And it requires not only practice in doing that as an educator, but also understanding how to do that and what that looks like in different environments, in different contexts with different learners. And that is something that we talk very heavily about in the course. And I shouldn't even say talk, because we don't talk about it, we do it.
Mhm.
And the other thing too, which is what I think is so great about this course, is that not only are the educators that are enrolled in the course learning about best practices in teaching, they're actually experiencing it. The course is built in a way that they're experiencing what these techniques are like for their learners. And near the end of the course, we actually draw back the curtain and show them how all of these techniques, all of these fundamentals, all of these concepts we've talked about were actually lived out in the course they just walked through with us. And so they're getting to, one, experience it as a learner, while also learning about it as an educator to pass on to their learners.
Mhm. So with that said, I would like to thank you, Rachel and Nicole, for joining us this episode of Nursing Edge Unscripted. And we thank you from the NLN for sharing your insights and expertise and your ever continuing support in facilitating this course and many other things that you do to really make this course a very successful one. So for more information about the NLN Faculty Intensive course, please go to the website, and there are information that would be apparent along with this podcast as well. So thank you, and we look forward to more conversations in the future.